Hello everyone and welcome to what is a little bit of an overdue YouTube video, but I thought there would be no better time than one about the Thunderpick World Championship event. I will be there to work. I'm very excited for it as well. Only my fourth or fifth in-person event, I believe, and my first one as an analyst as well. I'll be on the desk for the first 2 days of the groups. And yeah, I mean, before I've pretty much only done commentary on in-person events. I did about 2 or 3, actually I think 3 or 4 ESL challenges. I mostly do play-by-play and colour commentary, a bit of a hybrid in that sense. So to be doing an analyst gig in person is very exciting for me, and I can't wait to talk about the event. I'm a big fan of all the storylines and everything that goes with all these teams. Are not just a play-by-play guy who maybe doesn't focus too much on stats or narratives. I do love this aspect of it as well. So I think it's a great time for me to make a video on kind of my processes actually for a tournament like this, and how I would like to go about creating those narratives and pushing what I think is currently the state of these teams. And maybe some history of some of these teams and players as well that maybe some fans wouldn't necessarily remember or know about. There might be some fans of CS2, for example, that won't know back in early CSGO days how many big tournaments Innocent played on Venom, as just a random example. Of course, who's going to be attending this event. As I said, I'm going to be working the opening first 2 days, but I'll be staying out there until the final day. So make sure to drop me a follow on my Twitter and my Instagram, which I'll link below for behind-the-scenes content. And also, I'd mention for Ace Zone, as you can see, below my ugly mug. I really appreciate them as well. They have given me another code to use for all headsets at acezone.io. And you can get 10% off with that. Definitely the best headsets in Counter-Strike for me. I've been a big fan of what they've been doing in the scene for quite a while, and there should be more stuff, good stuff coming from them very, very soon. But let's dive into this now and just go through some of the things that I think are worthy to talk about in the tournament. Firstly, me. I'm kidding. I'm not that important. But yeah, I want to just talk about all the teams coming in now. You obviously got your 4 favourites, you've got your 4 qualifiers, you've got the underdogs, quite significant underdogs in these 4 teams in the lower portion here. And I'll start by going from, I guess, a low to high in that sense. We can start with Venom. The team core, as I'll just make sure I get the lineups up here. The team core is like the Rebels core. They came actually quite close to making some really good results on LAN lately, but unfortunately have fallen off a little bit since they qualified for the tournament. It was Rebels, and then it was Kalesi. Hfer and Kloku, formerly from BetClick and Apogee. Hfer played PGL Bucharest with Jacob, the event that kind of put Jacob into the eyes of Carrigan and FaZe. And obviously that's a bit of a mess right now on FaZe, but still, we'll see how Jacob does there eventually. And Innocent, of course, is probably the main guy you want to keep an eye on here. I had a really, really good interview with him in the close qualifier. He played 1.6, of course. He played the early years of Global Offensive. He played in G2, Illumina, ESC, Kingwin, Anonymo, Rebels. Played with ESC at DreamHack Winter 2014. Played in the Boston Major with Sprout. And played in PGL Krakow in 2017 with Penta. And those are the 3 international teams he's kind of most known for. Penta, Sprout, and Mad Lions, I would say. And you can argue tiers and stuff, but in my eyes this is his first tier 1 LAN since the Boston Major 7 years ago, when he played it for Sprout, like I said, which is quite kind of crazy. And it's special for him because this is a new arc for him in his career. He's an in-game leader now, trying to bring up these new Polish players, and probably the right time in his career to be an in-game leader, I would say. And funny enough, of course, he first played with his coach, Spero, in 2014 in teams like ESC, and played a major with him in DreamHack Winter 2014, and the same in G2 as well. So yeah, he's really had a storied career, which I think deserves to be celebrated somewhat, even though he has kind of been floating around tier 2, tier 3 for most of it. The win in the qualifier, the close qualifier versus NIP, was unbelievably the first time he's personally beaten NIP, and I think 9 or 10 attempts in BO1s and BO3s, dating all the way back to 2014. And that's crazy. Been on all these Polish teams. Even I think CSGO Lounge was one of the Polish teams he was on back then, and it kept obviously failing against NIP because NIP were kind of goated back then. But his first ever win against the organisation, that was a big step in toward the tournament, beating Amiga in the second qualifying game. Amiga definitely on a downturn in form at the moment without Zwei. That was a great win either way. And yeah, I think the crazy thing about the win versus NIP is that his personal performance was such a big anomaly. I think he had 45 kills in 2 maps, had a 1.54 rating, and yeah, he hasn't had an individual performance like that straight up for a very, very long time. So for it to happen then, it's pretty crazy. I think the main player that I think will be providing the numbers overall for Venom, though, even though they're a massive underdog here, and I expect them to probably bomb out 0 and 2, they're going to probably lose their opening 2 matches here. I still think you need to keep an eye on Flay. I mean, his last Tier 1 LAN was with Rebels at IEM Katowice 2024. There was still a Polish Regional Championship winners slot for the event back then. He got through the play-in, helped by a win against the Electronic Perfecto, Boomich, Axile, Hobbit, Cloud9, then performed admirably well in defeat against the Ents core version of Falcons, and he had a really, really cool 1v3 on Nuke that I think was quite a big highlight in Katowice that year. Their wheelhouse maps are mostly Train, they do pick Ancient often, they do permaban Inferno, but overall, they will probably play Ancient more. Unfortunately, their results are a little bit iffy on that lately. And as I said, I'm not expecting them to do too much here at all. They played Frag Blocktober, didn't look too good. They played the Birch Cup at their home in Gdansk, a local LAN, and they missed the playoffs. So they probably will bomb out here. Next team, Imperial. They're in a very weird state, I feel like, right now. Bringing Skulls back has already yielded 2 decent performances against Mouse and Liquid. They took a map off of both of them, but I'm not really confident how much further they can push upward. I think the player to watch is still Try, even though they do have now 2 ex-Furia players on the team, of course, in Cello and Skulls. He's putting in unbelievable performances for them on the AWP, both regionally and internationally. I think it's easy to forget that even though he's been playing professionally for 5 years, he's still only 20. Without a doubt, the player Imperial rely the most on in the games they play. Cello and Skulls have great experience together as well, but I still see few too many whiffs from both of them, which actually for me kind of summed up the end of their time on both Furia, for both Cello and Skulls on Furia. They both had just too many poor individual moments where they should have done better, which is probably why in the end that Furia moved on, right? I think it's important to mention as well that Skulls was actually unwell during the close qualifier, but actually played very respectably in the wins they got over TNL, which is now in a circle, of course. We've seen how good they can be at EPL and how damn good Davi is. I've been singing his praises for a very long time now alongside Ken. And they also beat domestic rivals Legacy. They only just squeaked past them 16-14, 13-11, but they were still very, very good wins. Then they went to the Land Grindstone. I think they were pretty much set, solid, to make the major anyway, but they still played these local lands. They played in Rio for the Fergie Rush. They came second in that tournament. But they lost to Keyed Stars in the groups, which is a very poor loss, especially on LAN, where you'd expect the experience of Imperial to look a lot better. They then lost to MIBR in a BO5 final, but still a good BO5 final against MIBR. It was relatively close. And they lost to Fluxo very comfortably in the Circuit X grand final in Curitiba, which is another city in Brazil. Not convincing form for me at all, but they will be in Budapest, which is at least a good thing for me. And I think Vinny is a great guy to talk to when you interview him. He always gives good insight, and hopefully we'll get that over the course of some of the Thunderpick content that will be going down, of course. They love Inferno, they love Nuke, they love Overpass, they don't play Ancient. Next team is OG. I've been a big fan of what OG have done in Tier 2 so far in this calendar year. Unfortunately, they've crashed out at their last opportunity to make the major, and it's a bit of a painful one. I think either way, OG have the highest skill ceiling in recent years for this particular organisation. I think Krisen's the best young in-game leader in the scene with what he's doing with his team at only 19. I think it deserves more praise than actually what it's getting, even though I think he's probably getting fair praise. I think he deserves a bit more for it. And just to give you an example of how much work he's had to put in last year's Thunderpick World Championship, Krisen qualified for the Berlin LAN through the play-in with 4 totally different players. Modo, Fiku, Mikey, and Buzz. And to quote Jose Mourinho, look at where they play, how they play, if they play. Modo's playing for 9, Fiku's playing for Wildcard now, and they're doing pretty terribly. Mikey's standing in for other Czech teams and Slovakian teams, and Buzz is not really doing anything. So Crizzen qualifying for the LAN with that team, and then with this team, it shows how much the team has moved on in terms of how they've picked their new individuals. And I'm going to talk about some of those now, of course. I think the Rifling Corps is the best they've had since they've actually first entered Counter-Strike, and I'm not even joking about that, even with the old MBK ISA team, and even Flamesy as well. Flamesy's the one outlier, I would say, but I do think overall it's more solid now than it's ever been before. I think Spook has insane pop-off ability, and having a Swedish duo in Adam B with him is incredibly reliable. The addition of Arosdos originally looked pretty poor, but I think he's grown into the system pretty well and is learning his job on the team bit by bit. He does play the pretty rough anchor positions, at least majority so, on OG. And he doesn't need to be the guy to carry the players around him. So it's important to realise that when you watch him play. Nikodos is still a strange one for me to talk about, because while he has all the experience now, he still, of course, deviates between AWPing and rifling. And I know he himself considers himself to be a better rifler, so how long that can go on for remains to be seen for me. OG's biggest issue is still, though, their occasional wobbles. They look shaky on a few too many anti-ecos and force buys. I think they're ready for consistent lands, but getting results at those lands consistently is not something they've got yet. They played Star Series. It was their first chance in a while. Definitely a massive opportunity for a big VRS injection for the Major in Budapest. But they underperformed, losing to NIP and Bait, both winnable games for me. And while they won Draculan, one of these small lands they've been grinding in this chance for the Major, they crashed out the Urban Open Riga on LAN to Malzinx, who hadn't had a single result recently. LMBT is coaching that team now, but they don't really have any known name anymore in that academy. It's a brand new group of like 5 players. I think one of them is of Zelex, I think is the one guy that maybe you may have heard of before. And Joey, the Spanish rifler, is looking pretty good. But to lose to Malzinx is pretty unforgivable. Len lost to Big, another pretty poor result with Big's form at the moment. And in the end, they had a glimmer of hope left at Fragadelphia Blocktober. In the end, figuring out that with all the other losses and other results that came in the year, if they won that event, they actually would have made the Major. But in the end, they lost to Fnatic. They finished third there, won the third place decider, but still pretty rough. Those results combined in those 3 lands contributed to them missing out on the Major. With a chance of still making it, making a run at Thunderpick, I think they're still an underdog. Bouncing back mentally after a crazy World Tour grind is going to be difficult for them. I think all of them have already said in a couple of interviews that they I think Crizzen said to Dust2US that everyone is out of energy, giving like 100% for every time they played in that World Tour. So I like OG a lot. I think there's a chance they could beat a Na'Vi. They could beat a Mongols if they're off form like they're showing in Pro League at the moment. But I don't think they're... At a stretch, they make playoffs. It's going to be tough. You can see the groups on your screen right now. In a group with Furia and Mongols, making playoffs is unlikely, for sure, right? So next team we'll go to will be the final underdog of the 4 teams that have qualified. And that will be 9Z. Now, this is a very weird one. Losing DGT and Martinez are obviously big hits for 9Z, but I was incredibly uninspired by the changes they then went to after that. Like, they've kept the core values of having South American players from lesser represented countries, in Max from Uruguay, Hasapeak from Chile, and Lucan from Argentina. But the 2 new additions, Levi and Urbano, came from a Tier 2 Brazilian team called W7M, who never really made any waves at that tier at any point. And these 2 individuals didn't stand out in that W7M team either. So, either way, in the qualifier, I was very happy with what I saw from Levi. And Brazil is overall somewhat short on AWPers, right? We have NQZ and Sadzin on Pain and Legacy. They're doing great. They're doing okay. But Fallen's given it over to Molodoy. Henny is benched on Red Canids. Zevi is getting a little bit better on Fluxo. They're starting to play the bigger events. I think they made the Major Fluxo. But he's not really made that big step forward people thought he would. And MIBR picked up a Russian G2 Academy player to pick up the sniper. And even at one point earlier in the year, I think Coldzo was AWPing on Odic for a bit before he gave it back to Woody. So it's a real weird state for Brazilian AWPers. I want to see if Levi can make that step up. However, making that step up is going to be very, very difficult. Levi's barely played any LANs at all. I believe Philadelphia was his first ever international LAN, and it's still technically in the Americas, right? In North America, South America, whatever. He's never been abroad out of the Americas for a international LAN. Which is why 9Z have been kind of grinding local LANs to try and get some of these points and try and give Urbano and Levi some experience, because Urbano is somewhat in the same boat as well. They qualified... after they qualified for Thunderpick, they scrambled to play these events, right? There was one in Brazil, there was one in Argentina, they played the Fergie Rush, and they then played the Odyssey Cup, I believe, from memory, and won it, beating Sharks. But they lost in the Aorus League to Dusty Roots, and then crashed out to Sharks and Gaming Gladiators in that Fergie Rush event. So they've really been on really poor form, and they did have a chance to play Philadelphia, but they lost to eventual finalists 9 in a close game. That would have given them some encouragement, but I'm not really hoping for too much here. There's a few positives. I think Kawaso Peak is still explosive and very, very talented. I think he's perhaps picking up some of the slack since DGT left. And I think bringing Lucan back is great for 9Z. Lucan's got all the experience, he's 28 now, fragging really, really well in regional South American tournaments, in Tier 2 online and on LAN. But he hasn't played an international LAN, if you don't count Philadelphia. He hasn't played like an EU LAN since the Antwerp Major in 2022. So it's been a really, really long time for him. And I really need to see him step up in a big event here, because he's going to be kind of like the elder statesman that some of these younger players might look up to, right? Their wheelhouse maps are Train, Inferno, Dust 2, and Ancient, and they permaban Mirage. I'm not expecting much from them, though, here at all. Now, as some of you may know, I have quite a lot of knowledge on Tier 1.5, Tier 2, Tier 3 teams. I obviously have tons of knowledge on the Tier 1 teams, but I've written a lot more down about the lower Tier 2 teams, just to give, I think, an insight to the viewer when I'm obviously some of these blurbs that I've written down here are not just for you guys right now, they're going to be for when I work the tournament in Malta as well. So if you listen out for some of these points when I'm on the desk doing some of the games. But yeah, as I said, some of these blurbs that I've made will be a bit shorter for these favourites, as they're a bit more known to the viewer who keeps in touch with all these constant Tier 1 tournaments around the scene, right? So we'll touch on Aurora first coming in here. I think, in general, my opinion of them is that they have their critics, namely their in-game leading and lack of T-side depth. But the main point of praise for me is they've continued to stay relevant throughout the entire calendar year, event upon event. I think even with the underperformance of Fissure, even with losing to FaZe in EPL and not making playoffs, they can still cause anyone problems on their day. But it's really time now for this relevancy to deliver a trophy. Major said that was what he wanted at the beginning of the year. This might be one of their best chances in what is an event with slightly less teams in it in general. They do have PGL Bucharest coming up, which is actually they're the highest ranked team at the moment that is playing that tournament. So it's definitely worth keeping an eye on them there. But their just current form is not good enough. And Xantares deserves a damn trophy. Like, he's been going for so damn long. He's won DreamHack Opens in like 2018 and 2019. He won actually a LAN in Malta before. He's a champion from Malta in the old CCT format LAN finals back then. And of course he won one good event with Big during the COVID era. I think it was DreamHack Masters Spring. But that was of course on the online era. It wasn't a LAN. He's had second place at WSG with Space Soldiers back in the day, second place Bet Boom Datcha, second EPL 20, second Blast Bounty, third at PGL Sana, and second at EWC. He's not made that one final step to a LAN trophy that he truly deserves. But unfortunately, I just don't necessarily think that this current team on the current form are going to be able to deliver that. And Major is the one kind of taking all the flack at the moment for his, let's call it, supposed like lack of T-side depth. You can criticise him all you want, but the crux of it all is that there's no younger, better fragging Turkish in-game leader that is a better fit. I'm not sure there even is a Turkish in-game leader coming up through Tier 3, Tier 2 that is a better fit. Yeah, the only other players that you've got playing lower tier now are like Paz in Fireflux. You've got, I think Dougie was on that team for a little bit as well. Soulfly is a great player from Fireflux, so I think deserves an upgrade to like an Eternal Fire or something with their current team they've got. But he's not an in-game leader. There is no Turkish in-game leader out there, and I know for a fact that team won't want to go international. So It's a shame. It's a shame, but the core of Xantares, Jota, and Wicadia is still one of my favourites to watch. Despite all this, they're still explosive and exciting. They need a win, desperately. I don't think they're going to get it here, but they need it, and I kind of hope they get it. Now, Mongols, they're on a bit of a weird downturn at the moment. They failed to make playoffs in EPL, losing to Navi in that final 2-2 match. And being the number one VRS team in the world, now all been on the team for 2 years or more, even though I see no reason why that shouldn't stay the same for a long time, and how, of course, EWC was an incredible moment for Asian Counter-Strike, now they have higher expectations on them, not just from the community, but from themselves. I'm sure they'll even class Fissure as a failure, right, after losing the final to Furia in what were 5 brilliant maps, but still, it was a loss, right, didn't win the tournament, when I'm sure they thought they were favourites for it. And despite all the other good points from their year that should be celebrated, failing to make EPL playoffs was definitely a big underperformance. And the highest ranked team they played at the event was Navi in that final decided 2-2 game. So they looked impatient. There was a mistake looked like there could be a mistake around every corner. And I question if they have the right backroom staff to support the players and Mara. I think they need like some kind of sports psychologist or something. I'm not sure if they have that. I'm maybe just uninformed on that front. But I think that's really a next step they need to move on and make something happen, and make a positive move happen rather than just rely on what's been working for you so far. You can't rely on. You have to evolve with not just your players but the backroom staff as well, right? So rough for Mongols at that EPL, and I really need to see a bounce back here. If they win Thunderpick, especially what would be beating great rivals in Furia and Navi and Aurora, that would be a real good bounce back for them. Navi's an interesting one. They recently won Star Ladder. It was a must-win as strong favourites for the event. They got it done. It was their first trophy since IM Rio last year. Thing is, they know the field wasn't the strongest, right? So the big question is if Navi can fix their issues against the top teams in the world, or is this roster never going to get better or get to that next point? What I haven't looked at yet from my little notes here that I've got is a couple of Blade interviews. He's done, I think, one with HLTV after they beat Mongols, and he did one pre-Star Ladder. He was talking about how the major will be Navi's exam. So I'm guessing I'm classing these current events as like a couple of mock exams for them. I think I'd give Star Ladder like a B+. I'd give maybe I'd give EPL a higher ranking if they even push even deeper into these playoffs, because I think it deserves to be said that their playoffs for EPL hasn't started yet. So if they somehow win EPL out of nowhere, that would give them a great opportunity coming into Thunderpick, which is why like these notes are not entirely complete just yet. But with maybe time against me before this event and Thunderpick, between EPL and Thunderpick, I do need to obviously get this video out now. So I think it can change. Navi's expectations can change. I think the individuals are great. I've been a big fan of Makaze ever since he came through the Navi Junior Academy. And I think Makaze's style is also, like, how he played in Navi Junior definitely worked for me as to be the player to be upgraded to the main team. It's not even, obviously, if you look at how that team is doing on foot now, Demon is looking amazing. But to compare him to Kiyosuke, for example, who was the kind of Makaze and Navi Junior's main rival on Spirit Academy many times, had a number of ding-dong battles in Tier 2. That was more the Kiyosuke show. Makaze on Navi Junior was more of a team effort, even though he put up great numbers. And I do think that because of that, he would fit well into Navi, and I feel like he is doing slowly. Navi are getting there. And I think Blade is willing to give them time as well, right? So looking forward to seeing if that can be a exciting factor for the team. Now, final team to read my little blurb out for you guys is Furia. And originally, I think a lot of you will know this if you followed me on Twitter, I was a huge doubter in the direction Furia were taking, but now they're one of my favourites. They're one of my favourites by far in Tier 1. I wanted the Brazilian super team for years, but because of the buyouts of the top players and other BR organisations, it hasn't been possible. That always disappointed me. And Furia took this route, and I'm going to hold my hands up and say I was very, very wrong. Not only is the Molodoi-Yakinda combination working to take them to their highest ranking ever, they're also looking like one of the most fun teams to watch in Tier 1. They're clearly enjoying their Counter-Strike. It's infectious. Fallen transitioning to a rifling in-game leader has looked completely fine. In the rounds where he picks up the AWP, he can occasionally make it look like 2016 again, which gives you that nostalgic feel-good factor. And Yukindar's resurgence is something that I just didn't see happening at all. I think he had all the talent in the world. He had one of the most exciting players in the world during his VP era. But his time on Liquid, especially at the end during the transition to CS2, looked so rough individually with whiff upon whiff that I had kind of lost belief entirely. It was so bad that when I heard Furia were looking to drag Fur out of semi-retirement instead for one of their tournaments, I thought it could be the better option. Not the case, and I couldn't be happier to be proved wrong, because Yukindar's a great personality for the scene and for Furia in general. And if you add to the fact that he's providing a helpful secondary voice for Fallen, and even fully taking over in occasional situations, that's gelling so well in such a short period of time. And looking like they're all understanding each other so quickly as well. Still though, the main star, that's Molodoi. Goes without saying, right? His story is stunning. Fallen saw his potential in playing Prax against Amcal, and I watched and casted him a lot in Amcal and DMS before it became Amcal, that particular roster, and he was very good. Very good. But to go to Furia and instantly deal with the challenges of speaking English with 5 new teammates, international travel, and be without doubt for me the Rookie of the Year over the likes of Kyosuke is incredible for me, and I absolutely love to see him doing so well. You've still got the reliable factors of Keisarato and Yuri. People wanted Keisarato to jump ship for years to a different team to win trophies, but maybe now staying put and being loyal, being that one club man that he is actually going to deliver him more. We don't even know. Maybe they're going to win EPL between me making this video and now. Incredibly reliable. And yeah, I mean, overall, you still have to argue for Keisarato and Yuri. They have underperformed in their careers, only winning Elisa Espo in 2023 and Flashpoint and Fisher Playground. Surely an underperformance for their talent. So they need more, and I'm really looking forward to seeing if they can do it here, because I think they're one of the favourites. I would actually pick them to win this tournament. I think Fury or Navi are going to be the main ones that I want to look at as possible champions here. Yukinda as well. I mean, that Fisher Playground trophy was actually his biggest trophy of his career. Yeah, he had only won online era titles before that. He won some like regional lands back when he was playing in like local Latvian tournaments, I believe. But he won CS Summit 7 and Flashpoint 2, both during the online era. So that Fisher Playground tournament was his best ever trophy, best and biggest land trophy. So beating Mongols in that final definitely puts them in contention at the top of the CS world for me, which makes it very exciting. We have 4 of these favourites to really look for. Now, if we actually just look at the pure bracket straight up here, look at favourites, I think Navi have to beat Imperial. I think Aurora have to beat Venom. If I was to pick between Navi and Aurora right now, though, I think I would pick Navi, even though we haven't seen the end of EPL yet. Aurora have looked a lot worse on T sides, and Alexi B, realistically, we know he's a lot better in game leader than Major at this current point, right? So I think they should beat them there. And if Aurora and Navi are not the 2 teams to make it through this group, it would be a big shock, obviously. Fury and Mongols, again, as I said earlier, it should be these 2 again here. 9Z do punch up to their EU opponents sometimes. I do think they deserve a little bit of a conversation, but not with the current 2 new players they've added. They're just not ready yet. It's as simple as that. The one team that I think could be an upsetter still is OG, and it's purely because, for me, I think they're going to play without pressure entirely after failing in the major race at the end of the those mini LAN tournaments they've played. I think they're just going to play completely without pressure and maybe punch up as well. They've got nothing to lose. OG, sure, you could argue that Venom, Imperial, 9Z have got nothing to lose, but OG have more of the proven quality in EU Tier 2, which gives me a hope that they could maybe upset in one of these games. Maybe they squeak through in a decider match against like a Fury or a Mongols if they do drop down, which I still doubt. But look, if they are able to squeak through, I think they have a conversation to be decent here, right? I mean, if it's Furia and Mongols that make it through, obviously one of them's going to have to drop down into that decider match. I don't know. I still have a little glimmer of hope about OG, a little glimmer of hope, just because they're playing with the pressure off, and I think Krisen's a great in-game leader. We shall see. Overall winner for the tournament, I think I'm going to go with Navi or Furia. ultimately, I'm picking Furia. They're my favourite team to watch right now. I think Mongols are showing a bit of a downturn in form, maybe with the expectations weighing on them a little bit. Aurora are definitely showing a downturn in form. I want Furia to win another trophy. I want another trophy for Kesarato and Yuri, and that's where I kind of want the direction of this tournament to go. I'm a big fan of theirs, and I think they deserve it after the boldness they took into making the roster changes they did make. And I think Molodoi is the best AWPer in the world right now. I'm not even joking. Like, Monazy's slowly ramping up back again in EPL. I think he's still in the conversation, even though he's had a rough year. Zywoo is more of a hybrid. I think he's truly up there, Molodoi, for AWPer of the Year, not just Rookie of the Year, and I'm not even joking. I think he's going to be in the list without a shadow of a doubt. But anyway, that is kind of my little preview and overview. I'm really looking forward to it. We're going to be working with some great people, of course, and that is always the best thing about these events. It's not just doing the job, it's not just talking about something you love, but it's also sharing the camaraderie with other talent as well. And I've known Harry and Hugo for a long time. I say hi to them whenever I'm at an event that they're working and I'm attending. Same with Blair, same with a lot of the guys there, same with Machine. I've worked with Tech Girl before and it's always been great. I've worked with Alan before at some ESL challenges. It's just the camaraderie between the talent, which I always think is a fun thing. And I know for a fact that the hard work that I've done to kind of get myself into this position has now paid off, but it needs to pay off for the future as well. I hope doing more work at Thunderpick will prove that I've got the broadcast nous for it. So I've been doing it for a very long time now, 6 years. My first in-person analyst gig, as I said in the beginning of the video, and a couple of commentary gigs in person before, like mostly for ESL Challenger. But this is definitely one of my big break events, so I'm really happy to be involved, and that's why I decided to make a video on it. So as I said at the beginning of the video, make sure to check in with all my socials below. Follow me on Twitter. Might be a banger or two there. Sometimes I get a bit lucky with those. I get some more likes than I expect. And follow me on Instagram as well to find out some of the behind-the-scenes little bits and pieces from when I get ready and do the rehearsal day and stuff like that. And also make sure to click acezone.io/Trav, which will be another link down below if you want to get yourself a new headset for Counter-Strike. Much love. See you in Malta. If you're going to be there some way, somehow, say hi. Cheers, everyone.